Yo, what's going on, everybody? I wanted to hop on here and talk about some of the sketchy stuff that I did when I was employed as a private investigator. Now, I wasn't a PI for very long, but it was a crazy job. I started out doing really basic stuff like working security in a college town, which is what I'm going to be talking about in this video, but I ended up going into other things like surveillance and more important protection work. Due to the nature of this video, everything that you are about to hear is totally false and it's for entertainment purposes only. So let's dive right into it, y'all. Now, when I first started working as a PI, my shifts were really boring in the beginning. They didn't put me on surveillance or anything interesting for the first few months of work, which makes sense. You got to get your feet wet, right? The first shift I had with these guys was providing security to a realty company in this college town that I lived close by to. For the job, I was to show up at 10 p.m. sharp. I would meet up with the other security guard, and I don't want to say too much, but we would use a specific application on our phone. We would log into the app and start the shift, and it was geo-locked to our location, so we couldn't clock in or out unless we were in the zone where we were supposed to be working. I would meet up with the other guard, and we would go around to all these different properties. Now, I don't want to say the name, but the realty company that was the landlord for these buildings in this town, they had maybe 70 to 80 buildings. I mean, they owned over half the town. The other landlords that owned properties in the town were just individuals. You know, they were just a few men or women that had some money and managed properties. But this company was worth millions of dollars, and they managed, as I said, probably over 70 or 80 properties. But anyways, the job was brutal. We'd start at 10 p.m. and we would walk around on foot to maybe 40 to 50 of these properties, and we'd go into the buildings, check them out, scan a code, and then move on to the next one. Each loop would take about 3 hours, and then there was a driving portion, and after that you could take like a 15 or 20 minute break. And not only that, but because this is a college town and we're in like security uniform, if you got to go to the bathroom, you can't just stop into a bar and take a leak. There's only one or two gas stations that we were allowed to stop into and be seen publicly going into the bathroom and buying stuff. Now, there was one girl that I had been seeing for a little bit that lived in this college town that I was working security for. Now, it was nothing crazy. We just kind of dated casually for maybe a few weeks. She was a really nice girl, talented musician, and we would just hang out, smoke weed, and just shoot the shit, hang out with each other, go out, get food. Sometimes we'd go out with her friends in town and party. It was a good time. But after a few weeks, we realized that we weren't very romantically compatible, and we decided to stay friends. This happened maybe a couple months before I started working security in that same town, right? But anyways, this night that I pulled up to work a shift, we had been talking. Well, not just that night, but even though we weren't seeing each other romantically, we were still responding to each other's Instagram stories and just staying in touch. But anyways, I pull up to work that 10 p.m. shift, I get out of the car, I sign on to my app, and before I go to the key box that belonged to the realty company, like, we'd hop on our phone and scan a code and it would give us access to the keys to go in and out of these places so we can do our jobs. I noticed that the other guy that I work with, he didn't show up that day. And that was really common. It was a two-man job, but sometimes one of us would be out because they'd have to pull one of us off of the security detail and put us onto a surveillance or a different protection job. This dude I worked with was really cool. I'm going to keep his details on the low, but for the sake of the video, we can just call this guy Mike. Now, Mike was a really cool dude. He was probably 10 to 15 years older than me. He was this big black dude, right? Probably in his mid-30s, really buff guy, maybe like 5'8", and he walked with a bit of a limp. And that's because he suffered an injury while serving the military maybe 20 years ago, back when he was in the infantry. But him and I would usually walk the same beat together, and we would just talk about bullshit all night and hang out while we were scanning codes and going in and out of these apartments. But like I said, he wasn't there. It's usually the two of us on, and it was just me that night. And sure enough, after I start making my rounds, I'm maybe about an hour into my shift, and my bum of a supervisor shoots me a text letting me know that I'm going to be on my own that night. Now, as long as it was just me, a lot of this was up to my own discretion, and my supervisor really didn't pay a lot of attention to these kinds of low-key security jobs. Usually our advisor would only be watching the app and monitoring our location if we had some important work to do or if something was just clearly off. But anyways, I start doing the job as usual, and that night was kind of just rough. I was just dreading it. I'd gotten to maybe the 40th or 50th property. I probably walked 4 or 5 miles, and I was just kind of beat. It was probably 12 or 1 in the morning at that point, and I was watching all these homies in college going from their parties to the bar and hanging out with their friends, and I'm just going door to door to make sure that all these apartments are okay. But anyways, guys, I make my first loop and then I pull up to the gas station, buy some smokes, refuel the car, and I pull up to the parking lot of this realty company. And I'm just chilling on my phone, smoking a little bit, because like I said, after we did our rounds, it was totally fine for us to take a break. And my supervisor wasn't going to get on me unless I just stopped moving for like 20 or 30 minutes. But while I'm on my phone, I see a notification from this girl that I used to see in the college town. For the sake of the story, we can just call her Tina. But Tina hits me up and we're just talking about the night, and she's explaining that her plans fell through. There was this saloon style bar in this college town that was really popular. It was where everybody would go during the weekends. She had made some plans with her friends to pregame and go to the bar together, but I guess that fell through, and she messaged me saying that she was just chilling in her apartment alone with her roommates and that she was down to smoke up if I could get over there. Now, out of reflex, when I saw that, I immediately started typing out that, oh, well, I'm working security, I don't want to lose my job and this and that. But then I realized, I thought to myself and I was like, holy shit. I could go smoke with this girl and then finish my shift like nothing had happened, and nobody would be any wiser to it. I sat there by my car thinking about what I was about to do, like still wearing my security uniform with all of my gear on and everything, and I said, fuck it. I pull up Instagram and I hit up Tina and I tell her that I'll be over in 10 minutes, maybe 5, 10 minutes. I just wanted to finish my break and make it look like I started my next patrol route before I headed over there. So anyways, I finish my dart, I hop in my car, and I drive over to Tina's spot. I pull up on the side of the street by her apartment, and as I put my car in park, I can see her just chilling on the front porch with her bong, and she's grinding up some bud and sitting on the steps. It was a really nice, foggy, warm night, and I was lucky. There were no noise complaints, no dickheads in the apartments or reports to write. I just got really lucky, and it seemed like I had a lot of time to kill that night anyway. I check out my app and I can see that my supervisor hasn't been online in a while, and I've looked pretty busy for the past few hours, so I decided to go for it. I get out of the car and I link up with Tina, and we're just chilling, having a really nice time. It's a beautiful night out. We're just sitting on the front porch, passing this bong back and forth, and watching people pass by. The first time I ripped the bong when she handed it to me, she did have a pretty good laugh because it looked really out of place, me in full uniform just chilling there getting high as shit. But anyways, we go back and forth for a little bit. I think we cashed probably 2 or 3 bowls over the course of like 20 minutes before I look at my phone and realize how much time had passed. Now, luckily, the apartment that Tina lived in was really close to one of the nearby properties that I had to check into and scan anyway, but my supervisor noticed that I was in one place for a long time. I hit that bong and then I passed it to Tina and I could feel my phone buzzing. So I picked that thing up and sure enough, it was my supervisor asking me why I was in one place for so long. Tina's having a pretty good laugh. She thinks this shit's pretty funny, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried because I know I need to come up with something pretty witty or else he'll catch on to the fact that I'm goofing off a little bit and I'm not really on the timing that I should be for my shift. But I came up with a pretty good excuse on the fly. I start to text my supervisor back, and I explain to him that this apartment that I'm in has some really loud music coming from the top, and that I've been speaking with the tenant, explaining to them that they need to turn their music down, or else I'm going to have to write a noise complaint if they're still being loud the second time I come around. Now, that was utter bullshit. When Mike and I worked this beat, we would never write noise complaints out unless we absolutely had to. We were pretty chill. But anyways, my supervisor bought it, and he just told me to get going and to get to the next apartment and keep scanning codes. Tina and I finished smoking up, and it was really good to just see her and catch up with her and obviously get high as shit on the job. But we packed it up and I said goodbye to her, and then I moved on to the next apartment, and I just kept doing my job like everything was totally normal. I ended up getting through my shift and reaching 3 a.m. and then clocking out. I don't know if I explained this earlier in the video, but we had to get there at 10 p.m. sharp to start the shift, and we weren't allowed to end the shift and clock out until about 3 to 3:30 in the morning. And the location for clocking out was geo-locked. So if I drove out of the college town, I wouldn't be able to end my shift, and I would have to turn around and drive back to the location, and then I'd be able to clock out. But yeah, guys, the night went totally fine. I can't believe I actually worked security while getting high as fuck and then just going about my duties like nothing had happened. And I didn't interact with anybody else that night. I saw a few people on the streets leaving the bars and, going in and out of restaurants, but I never had to interact with anybody else. Like, there was nobody in the apartments that I was in that I had to speak to or, write any noise complaints, so I didn't have to deal with anybody that night. Kind of an anticlimactic video, but I think back to when I worked this job, and this was just one of the dumbest but most fun experiences that I've ever had while getting paid for it. To this day, I'm still kind of shocked that I did that and dipped my security shift to go smoke pot with this girl that I used to hook up with, but hey man, what you gonna do? It made my night a whole lot more interesting and nobody found out about it. In all the jobs that I've ever had, sometimes I'll cut corners by clocking out a little bit early or taking a longer break than I should have, but this was probably the craziest shit that I've ever done on the clock. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked this video. Drop a like if you did. Peace.